Again, the umbilical has fully retracted, and the first set of 6 hooks of 12 are also retracting. Each of these sets of hooks takes a little bit more than 2 minutes to fully retract. And on your screen, you can see the team here in Mission Control Houston. We're currently still in what we call integrated operations while we're working alongside SpaceX and Axiom, but following the undocking and exit from the approach ellipsoid this morning, we'll turn it over to Axiom and SpaceX to take it the rest of the way home as Crew Dragon Freedom prepares to splash down off the coast of Panama City, Florida this evening at 10:04 p.m. Central Time. That first set of 6 hooks continuing to retract.
Dragon, SpaceX on the big loop, first set of hooks open and nominal. Dragon, SpaceX on the big loop, first set of hooks open and nominal.
And you did hear the confirmation there that the first set of hooks have successfully retracted, everything continuing to go as planned. The second set of hooks are now in the process of retracting. This second set of hooks will take about 2 minutes as well to retract. And we're about halfway through that second set of hooks. Second set of hooks continuing to retract.
Dragon, SpaceX on the big loop, all hooks open. Dragon separation confirmed.
And we do have confirmation of Freedom, Crew Dragon Freedom undocking at 10:05 a.m. Central over the Tasman Sea. And you're seeing a video of that separation on your screen right now. So Dragon has started to push itself away from the International Space Station. And with that, Peggy Whitson, John Schaffner, Ali Alcarni, and Rihanna Barnaby have completed their journey aboard the International Space Station. Again, confirmed separation at 10:05 a.m. Central Time.
Dragon, SpaceX on the big loop, depart burn 0 nominal.
Copy, and thank you for the hospitality. ISS.
And we are hearing good confirmation of those undocking burns. You also heard some work.
And Axiom 2, it was a pleasure having you on board. We really appreciate all the hard work. Congratulations on an outstanding mission. Thank you for all your great generosity. It was greatly appreciated. And I wish you calm seas and calm winds for your splashdown this evening. Take care. Fly safe. Station, we appreciate it all.
And Houston copies.
And some kind words there between Axiom 2 Commander Peggy Whitson and Steve Bowen, who's on board the International Space Station monitoring today's undocking. Now, lit up against the International Space Station there, you just saw the flashes from the thrusters as those departure burns continue to take place. These short burns help increase the speed at which Dragon is flying away from the space station and start to send it on a trajectory up and over the International Space Station. And there you can see those thruster firings lighting up the Soyuz vehicle docked to the International Space Station. The next burn that we're tracking is the departure burn, which will help increase the initial opening rate between the Crew Dragon and the space station. This burn will last about 21 seconds. And this departure burn 1 is slated to begin just about 2 minutes from now. Following this burn, the crew will start to take off their spacesuits until it's time to deorbit. They do wear their launch and re-entry spacesuits during the dynamic phases of flight. However, during this 12-hour journey to splashdown, they'll have the opportunity to take their spacesuits off and get comfortable. And then they'll put their spacesuits back on ahead of splashdown later this evening. Now 1 minute until the departure burn 1 begins. Again, this 21-second burn is going to help continue to propel Freedom away from the International Space Station. And shortly after the departure burn occurs, Freedom will exit the keep-out sphere. The keep-out sphere is an imaginary sphere which is 200 meters in radius around the International Space Station. And it's one of several safety zones that's set up to govern visiting spacecraft either arriving or departing the space station. Before moving into the keep-out sphere, spacecraft have to be configured where they would not cross the imaginary boundary for at least 4 orbits, even if the spacecraft were to lose all of its maneuvering. Depart burn 1 underway. And you are seeing some of those thruster firings on board Dragon. Again, this burn is using the Draco thrusters,
Dragon
and that burn
SpaceX
did
on
just
the big
complete
loop.
and all went
Departure burn
smoothly.
1 nominal, and all Dragon systems look healthy. Good on dock. At this time, you are go to DOF suits in 4.012, and finally a reminder that the big loop will be deactivated following Dragon's exit from the approach ellipsoid.
Dragon Southeast, go for suit DOF suit.
And with that call out of a successful departure burn 1, the crew now has the go to get out of their spacesuits and get comfortable for the 12-hour journey until splashdown. Continuing to get some views. Continuing to get some views of Freedom as it backs away from the International Space Station. And we just got word that Dragon has exited the keep out sphere. Again, that's imaginary sphere. It's that imaginary sphere 200 meters in radius around the International Space Station. And on your screen here, as you continue to see Freedom back away, you're actually able to see those windows on the vehicle and can kind of make out the crew inside as they continue to get smaller and smaller, making their way back home.
Dragon Southeast.
The next major milestone that we are tracking this morning is when Dragon exits the approach ellipsoid, or AE. This is another imaginary shape. It's a three-dimensional ellipsoid measuring 4 kilometers by 2 kilometers by 2 kilometers. It's in the same family as the keep-out sphere. One of the key differences with the approach ellipsoid is that vehicles outside it have to be on what we call a 24-hour safe free drift trajectory. And we're getting some really great views of Dragon here as it continues to undock from the International Space Station. You can see the nose cone is open and the trunk is attached. Before splashdown, the nose cone will close and that trunk will be deorbited. And with everything continuing to go smoothly here in Mission Control Houston, we are waiting for Dragon to exit that approach ellipsoid following the on-time undocking this morning at 10:05 a.m. Central Time. Dragon has completed a series of burns to back it away from the International Space Station, and again, everything going A-OK this morning here in Mission Control Houston. So I'm going to toss it over to Hawthorne to give us an update, and so they can share a little bit about what it was like to see undocking from their perspective.
Awesome. Thank you, Sandra. If you're just now joining us, you are watching the undocking of the Dragon Freedom vehicle carrying the AX-2 crew members as they make their way back down home to Earth. And just as Dragon fully autonomously flew to the International Space Station, it is fully autonomously flying them back down to Earth as well. So all these maneuvers that you're seeing are fully autonomous, and we have completed a few burns. Once the vehicle is out of the keep-out sphere, then it can perform its deorbit burn and make its way back down to Earth. So what you can expect as Dragon returns is the trunk will be jettisoned. Once we jettison the trunk, then the vehicle can reorient itself for making its way back into the Earth's atmosphere, and then the drogue and main parachutes will deploy, and the crew will safely touch down in the ocean off the coast of Florida. Now, just as a reminder, this is the second flight for this Dragon, specifically Dragon Freedom, and it first flew on Crew 4 in April in 2022. This is also the 10th human spaceflight mission in the last 3 years.
Wow, exciting stuff. Well, and for Axiom Space, these missions serve as a precursor in developing the teams, systems, and relationships necessary to operate our own Axiom station currently under construction. For Peggy Whitson, John Schaffner, and Saudi national astronauts Ali Al-Qarni and Rayana Barnawi, this has been an incredibly successful mission. As the second private mission to the International Space Station, Axiom 2 is also an important step for Axiom Space and its academic and industrial partners to perform proof-of-concept studies and cutting-edge advancements in microgravity. During their time on the orbiting laboratory, the AX-2 astronauts successfully executed over 20 STEAM outreach engagements and 20 different microgravity experiments, as well as 8 media events. They utilized novel technologies on orbit that could be used for future human spaceflight pursuits and benefit humankind on Earth. Returning with them in the SpaceX Dragon Freedom is more than 300 pounds of cargo and important data that will impact our understanding of human physiology on Earth and on orbit. And beyond all that, they also had a few moments to take in a view unlike any found on Earth, looking at the planet from 250 miles above it. So for more details on the incredible work performed by this crew and on orbit, check out the axiomspace.com/AX2 research website. It's going to be pretty incredible to see all of the work that they perform on station brought back and those data analyzed and everything really given sort of its full breadth of knowledge once they get back here on Earth.
Yeah, Duke, this has been an incredible mission so far, and we're going to send it back over to Houston, Texas Mission Control with Sandra Jones. How's it going, Sandra?
Thanks, Jesse and Duke. Everything's still continuing to go smoothly here in Mission Control Houston. We are standing by for Dragon Freedom to exit that approach ellipsoid. Again, this is a 4 kilometer by 2 kilometer by 2 kilometer zone around the International Space Station, in which a vehicle must be on a 24-hour safe trajectory from interfering with space station, even if it lost all maneuvering capability. We are just a few minutes away from that expected approach ellipsoid exit. Now, once that approach ellipsoid exit does occur, the team here in Mission Control will continue to monitor every step of the way, but the prime responsibility once they exit approach ellipsoid will be on SpaceX and Axiom Space. So again, just a few minutes away from approach ellipsoid exit, we are targeting that exit for 10:25 a.m. Central. Another thing that will happen once the crew exits the approach ellipsoid is that integrated communications loop called the big loop will be taken down, as we are no longer in those integrated communications. And at this time, Crew Dragon Freedom is 916 meters away from the International Space Station. Just about a minute until expected exit from the approach ellipsoid.
Dragon, SpaceX, comm check on Dragon to ground.
SpaceX Dragon, comm check. How do you read us on Dragon to ground?
Hey Peggy, we've got you 5x5 on Dragon to ground over, I'm assuming, the cabin mic. At this time, we've just exited the approach ellipsoid, and Dragon is on a safe free drift trajectory, and I'm letting you know that we're going to take down the big loop here shortly.
Okay, copy. Thank you.
And we did get that confirmation that Dragon has successfully exited the approach ellipsoid and is continuing their journey back to Earth. So with that, from here in Mission Control Houston, we will conclude our coverage of this mission and hand it over to the teams at SpaceX and Axiom to take it from here. Thank you so much for joining us for our coverage today of hatch closure and undocking. Until next time, this is Mission Control Houston.
Awesome. Thank you, Sandra. Now that Peggy Whitson, John Schaffner, Ali Al-Karni, and Rayana Barnawi have departed the International Space Station, it will only take them roughly 12 hours until they make their way back down to Earth. Next up, the crew will doff their spacesuits to get a little bit more comfy for flight. After a brief off-duty period, the crew will then begin final cabin in-cabin preparations. And approximately 6.5 hours from now, they will don or put back on their spacesuits and begin final preparations for deorbit, entry, and splashdown. Our teams here on the ground will continue to keep an eye on the weather to ensure a safe return to Earth for Dragon and the AX-2 crew.
And should the current projections hold, starting at 11:04 p.m. Eastern and 8:04 p.m. Pacific this evening, Axiom and SpaceX will pick back up with live coverage of the conclusion of this AX-2 mission. Should teams need to adjust the timing of splashdown, it is our plan to go live about an hour before splashdown. For the latest on the timing of this final stage of the AX-2 journey, be sure to visit axiomspace.com, and you can track Dragon Freedom's flight on spacex.com/launches. From all of us at Axiom Space, thank you to NASA for the incredible efforts made on this mission toward the shared goal of expanding access to low Earth orbit to include more countries, institutions, industries, and individuals than ever before. This is how we are building history. And thank you, Jesse, for sharing the desk with me. It's been an honor. And thank you for tuning in, all of you. Spasiba, shukran. We look forward to sharing the culmination of this mission with you soon.
Fake ID documents are a serious threat, easily ordered online. Fake IDs can get used for anything from underage drinking to identity theft to terrorism. Think twice if you consider this a minor issue. There is a powerful and proven solution to protect IDs and check their authenticity: the kinogram. The kinogram is so difficult to imitate that fake ID documents are easily detected with the naked eye. Identity documents need secure protection. Learn more at kinogram.com.
Pressure looks good.
Following up. Roger, roger, planet.
Yikes. You bet. Okay. We don't need any more of these.
Hello, everybody. What's up, Tank Watchers? I'm Jack Beyer, hosting this beginning of the live stream today. You can see in front of you there is Starship serial number 10 on Pad A, and we are expecting a cryogenic proof test today. Residents have gotten an overpressure notice, which, you know, might indicate some other testing is possible, but we don't think those overpressure notices are necessarily good indicators of what's going on. Maybe more of just a cover the bases kind of thing. But as you can see, like I said, Starship serial number 10, look at that vent. Look at it go. So you can see some frost there by the aft flaps, and you can see it is an active vehicle right now. So it looks like they are currently in the stages of conducting a cryogenic proof test. So that is why we are live today, and that is what we are hoping to see. And as always, on the stream, we've got Michael Baylor running stuff in the background, pulling all the various steampunk levers.
Yeah,
Michael, what's up?
I'm doing well, and if something is wrong, let me know in chat. We totally were in a rush to get ready because this test started up quite quickly, but it looks like chat is saying 5x5 and good audio, so that is a good start so far.
Excellent. Yeah, I forgot to do the whole DOS thing of saying, can you hear me 5x5? Let me 5x5 in chat. But great, I'm glad to know that you guys can hear us. And I do believe we are getting another feed spooled up from, of course, Mary, who is out there. Boca Chica gal. Is this that feed, Michael?
Yeah, that is Mary's feed.
Nice. Yeah, you can see it's just a much better quality camera. Much closer view.
The flare stack, it has some venting coming out of it right now on Mary's camera.
And that's really interesting behavior we've started to see lately from that flare stack. It no longer flares, seemingly, it just vents. And petition to change the name to Vent Stack. But yeah, it looks like, you know, like I said, tank farm is active. The vehicle is slightly frosty. You can even see, just barely, there's some vapors coming out from underneath the aft section there. So that is indicative of liquid nitrogen having been loaded onto the vehicle as part of this cryogenic proof test.
Yeah, people are going to be asking, why don't we think it's a static fire? Well, here are the signs you can see right now at the pad. There is very little venting from the tank farm. The methane recondenser is not on, and we are seeing frost on Starship. For static fire, normally we would not see frosting and venting like this early in the countdown. Sometimes we see a little bit of frost at the bottom during a static fire, but they don't put much repellent in the tanks for a static fire. So right now, we're going to see, most likely, if this goes like the previous cryogenic proof test, we should see the tanks get quite frosty because they put a lot more LN2 in for a proof test than propellant in for a static fire test.
Yeah, that makes sense. And those periodic vents that we're seeing, they look a lot like what we like to call pressure maintenance venting, where sort of, you know, as the liquid nitrogen in the tank is heating up, they want to maintain, you know, whatever pressure that they need for testing, and so periodically they will vent a little bit of that that gaseous nitrogen off, and sort of keep things in the corridor that they're wanting it to be in. Sort of, I mean, in a lot of ways, it looks similar to when they test the test tanks, like 7.2 there you can see on the right side of the screen. Because again, that's all cryogenic proof tests, and there's another one of those vents. That's not a depress vent. That's not the classic double depress vent that we always look for when they're doing static fire attempts or flight attempts. That looks like there is there is liquid nitrogen in that liquid oxygen tank, and it is warming up, and they are periodically releasing some of that pressure. But that is a proof test, right? It's like a giant steel balloon, and they are hoping to make double, triple sure that steel balloon can hold pressure, and this is how you do it, with a whole bunch of liquid nitrogen. And yeah, so if you guys have any questions, don't forget you can @NASA Spaceflight in chat, and that helps us see your questions with some nifty software that Michael put together. And I will bring up the host panel right now.
Helen Hadsell was able to win any competition she took part in. She was known as the contest queen because she had won 7 trips to Paris, boats, houses. She would basically take part in any sweepstake she read about, any contest, and she would just win. That made my documentary crew, and I asked Helen, how do you do that? And she spoke about this thing called the Silva technique. Helen, you see, was Jose Silva's former PR manager. She had the benefit of learning closely from that man. Now, Jose Silva was a radio repairman who lived in the border town of Laredo, Texas in the 1940s. He had 10 kids, and his kids were not doing very well in school. Now, Jose Silva had a crazy idea. You see, he had served in the US Army, and he was fascinated by the psychological questions that the Army psychologists would ask new recruits. So he decided to look at psychology and then look at what he knew about radio repair and figure out how he could change the mindset and the brains of his kids so they could do better in school. As a radio repairman, he knew that if you reduce the resistance of a wire, more electricity flows through it. So he wondered, what could I do to reduce the resistance in the human mind? He decided to experiment with reducing any form of resistance in his children's brain. He experimented with biofeedback. He experimented with hypnosis. And sure enough, his children's grades started improving at school. But then something astonishing happened. He was sitting down with his daughter Isabel, reading a history book and asking Isabel questions. So he would guide Isabel into a restful state of being. She would have her eyes closed. He would read her the important dates. She would be able to absorb that, and then he would ask her questions. But something strange started happening. Isabel was able to answer a question before he verbally spoke it. Now let me explain this. He would think of the question in his head, a question such as, who was the 16th president of the United States? Before he could verbally say it, Isabel would answer the question, Abraham Lincoln. Jose Silva was mind blown. And so he wrote to Professor J.B. Ryan at Duke University. J.B. Ryan was famous for his research into a concept called ESP, extrasensory perception. And Silva told Ryan, Doctor, I think I trained my daughter to have ESP. J.B. Ryan replied back in a letter and said, no, that's absolutely not true. No one can be trained to have this. Your daughter must have been born with it. Jose Silva disagreed. So he continued training the rest of his kids to develop a high degree of intuition. So now over the next 10 years, Jose Silva trained 39 Laredo children on this approach. He documented the results. He made everything hyper precise, and he proved J.B. Ryan wrong. This was a trainable skill. But then adults started noticing, and adults started coming to him in Laredo, Texas to get trained. Jose Silva decided to call this approach the Silva Mind Control Method. And what happened next was astonishing. A man wrote in a newspaper how after learning Silva's method, he was able to cure his persistent migraine headaches for good. The migraines just disappeared. The next class, Jose wrote in his autobiography, was absolutely flooded by people. And the Silva Mind Control Method ended up expanding all across the United States. So here's what Jose Silva discovered as the root cause of all our problems. We are powerful beings, but from the time we are born, from the education system we grow up in, from our parents and caretakers who may not know better, we take on so much negative programming. We actually suppress our inherent human abilities. There was a famous study done that showed that all children under the age of 4 are naturally hyper-creative and genius. But the percentage of kids who show genius ability gets lower and lower and lower as they get older. Something about our modern way of life removes these unique abilities from us. The solution Jose Silva discovered is the act of being able to consciously access altered states of consciousness. What is an altered state of consciousness? Well, our consciousness actually operates at different frequencies. You can measure this using a scientific device called an EEG machine. There is a frequency called beta, which is the waking state frequency. Most of us are in beta as we go through our jobs. But when you get into a relaxed state of mind, you go into a hyper-creative state called alpha. Alpha is known for creativity, for problem solving, for accelerated healing. Meditators, monks go into alpha as part of their daily routine. Athletes are proven to go into alpha before they take a shot, before they shoot an arrow. The alpha state is what you're in when you practice relaxation or meditation. And this is why there are over 15,000 studies today that show that being relaxed and being in a meditative or mindful state actually improve your health and well-being. But you can go further than that. You can access the next state, which is called theta. Now, theta is a really curious state. Scientists who study theta say that this is the state that gives you inspiration, eureka moments. Difficult problems suddenly get solved with a great insight. Let me give you an example. Thomas Edison, the great inventor, was known for his afternoon naps, but he napped in a really curious way. Legend has it he would sleep on a sofa holding a metal ball in his hand, and when he drifted off into deep sleep, his hand would drop, the ball would hit a metal plate next to the sofa, causing a loud clang that woke him up. In short, he was dipping into sleep and waking up, dipping into sleep and waking up. Why did he do this? Because Edison was dipping into the theta level. The theta level is the level of light sleep, and he was dipping into it to get inspiration and insights. He wasn't the only one. A famous American inventor by the name of William Gates II would create some of the most incredible patents and trademarks. He had dozens of them, but his method was to go into theta by locking himself in his darkened basement, closing all the lights, sitting on his desk, and going into a deep state of relaxation where ideas and eureka moments would flow to him. Now, while theta is the waking frequency, all of us can learn to tap into alpha and theta, and the next level is the most curious of all, delta. Delta is the level that you're in when you're asleep. But Silva found that you can learn to program your mind just before going to sleep and have your mind solve problems for you while at delta. Scientists who study delta have noticed this. People who are able to operate at the delta level of mind often tend to be incredibly lucky. Miracles happen. Crazy serendipities occur. You might call it magic or good luck, but it's something different. It almost seems like these people who are trained to access delta can bend reality. Jose Silva went on to create this incredible movement called the Silva Mind Control Movement. It was one of the first personal growth programs in America. His book, The Silva Mind Control Method, sold millions upon millions of copies. Everyone from opera singer Margarita Piazza to the Chicago White Sox spoke about how Silva techniques were allowing them to improve their skill on stage or on the ball field. Silva went deep into pioneering new techniques, including the centering exercise to rapidly take you into the alpha level. And then he created techniques to amplify focus, creativity, and intuition. His mental video technique, which he created in the mid-1990s as he lay at his deathbed, was designed to help you bring in higher intelligence to help you solve the most difficult problems. He also created the 3 scenes technique to help you see your life unfolding exactly as you want it to unfold, and also to accelerate healing and manifest your deepest desires. His case working technique was designed to train people to learn the science of mind-body healing. As the Silva method grew, of course there were skeptics. Newspapers sent journalists to go into Silva classes and see what this man was talking about. Silva classes were absolutely mobbed by people, filled with Wall Street types and executives, and they were loving it because they were learning to conquer stress. But what they did not know, Jose Silva was not going to stop at something so simple. Stress was just one aspect. By day 4 of the class, they were learning to tap into intuition, to access deep states of meditation, and to manifest their future. An entire marketing company was organized by graduates to use what they learned in Silva to invent new products and decide new ways to market them. In its 3rd year, the company had 18 products on the market. Furthermore, one advertising man used to need 2 months to create a campaign for his clients. This was quite average in the field. Applying the Silva method, he brought the process down to 20 minutes. The rest of the work was done in 2 weeks. Now, the famous Chicago White Sox had 14 players take the Silva method. All their individual averages improved, most of them dramatically. The husband of a woman who was suffering from obesity suggested she try the Silva method because all the diets she tried had failed. She agreed, provided he took Silva too. She lost 20 pounds in 6 weeks. He stopped smoking. A professor at a college of pharmacy taught Silva to his graduates. Their grades are going up in all their courses, he said, with less studying, and they are more relaxed. Everybody knows how to use their imagination. I just get my students to practice it more. I show them that imagination is valid and there's a form of reality in imagination that we can use. With all of the success, Jose did not become a celebrity, not a guru, not a spiritual leader with followers. He's a plain man of simple ways, speaks with a soft, lost accent of a Mexican American, a kind man who smiles easily whenever he hears, "Jose, you changed my life." And he replies, "No, I didn't do it. You did, with your own mind." Now, are you ready for this? Because this is the craziest story of all. You see this? This is the cover of Time magazine. And on this cover, you see the author, Richard Bach, who wrote the famous book, Jonathan Livingston Seagull. This Time magazine is from November 13, 1972, and I got this on eBay. Richard Bach made the cover of Time magazine because his book, Jonathan Livingston Seagull, struck such a chord, it took off and sold millions of copies. But here's the thing. In an interview with Harper's Bazaar magazine, Richard Bach said that this book had been sitting in his basement for years until he took a Silva class. And as he went into his alpha level of mind, the final closing chapter of the book came together. He was able to complete the book, submit it, and it became one of the best-selling books of his generation, putting him on the cover of Time magazine. I interviewed his daughter to validate it, and sure enough, Bach's daughter confirmed the story, saying that her father had the manuscript for 5 years in their basement. She also said that her father would come back from these classes, sit down with her, and teach her techniques. And now she understood that these were Silva techniques. Before I show you how to change your mind to change your life, let me first say, my name is Vishen Lakhiani, and many people call me one of the luckiest people alive. I built my dream company, Mind Value, into a massive valuation. My book, The Code of the Extraordinary Mind, became the #1 book in the world on Amazon, September 16, 2017. My second book hit #1 in the Wall Street Journal. I run multiple companies around the world in just a few hours a week, and I live a life that I consider blessed. Now, while on the outside, all of this seems like luck, the truth is, I've been using the Silva method for the last 20 years to reprogram my brain, to manifest the life I design. And once you begin to understand it, synchronicities become part of your life. Magic seems to infuse your life. It almost seems as if the universe has your back, just like Helen Hetzel did. You see, Helen was doing what all us Silva graduates know. She was a master at bending reality. It wasn't until I stumbled upon the Silva method that everything changed for me. It started when I was 26. It was April 2001 when I landed in San Francisco, and my timing sucked because the dot-com bubble burst. I lost my savings, I lost the job I had, and I was forced to get a dialing for dollars job, selling software to lawyers and making absolutely nothing. The economy was so bad, they were not paying a base salary. It was either sell a software and get a 20% cut, or you don't get to eat that week. I was seeing my bank account get lower and lower and lower, and I couldn't afford rent, so I was sleeping on a friend's couch. And one day, in desperation, I decided to get on Google and ask for help. Google was the hot new search engine in Silicon Valley, and I can't remember what I put in. Maybe it was, "Dear Google, why does life suck so bad? or it was, dear Google, how do I get out of this rut? And what I remember happened next is that I saw a search result for a Jose Silva class happening in Los Angeles. I decided to put together the few $100s I have, fly to LA and take this class, especially because it seemed to promise so much: improving sales, manifesting your dream life, bringing you out of a depression. And boy, I needed that because I was so down. Now, this class in LA was called Silva Ultramine. It was Jose Silva's final creation. He had produced this program and released it in a limited way to the world in around 1996. Jose died in February 1999, and this program was his last creation. And this seminar in LA was being taught by a pharmaceutical salesperson. When I met her, she explained that she had used these techniques to overcome the agony of a tragic divorce. She had built her life back. She had transformed her sales in her company. And to prove it to me, she showed me the beautiful red sports car that she was driving. Furthermore, she said she had used it to meet the man of her dreams. And that's why, in addition to all of this, she decided to give back to others by getting trained in the Silva method so she could teach this class. That was enough for me. If I could get just 10% of the success she had, I would be ecstatic. And so I took the class with her. I was the only person who showed up for this 2-day class. And so as I went through this class, she made me understand why I was so stuck. I was using just a limited portion of the faculties of my mind. I was programmed with beliefs and ideas that were holding me back. And I'd literally shut myself down to human abilities that Jose Silva had showed that we all have, but so few use. I flew back to San Francisco Sunday night because I had to start work on Monday, and my life was never going to be the same again. On Monday morning, when I woke up, before going to work, I used my Silva techniques to program my day. And then at work, I used the technique to go into the theta level of mind and tap into intuition. You see, back then, we had to check out the yellow pages. Remember that big, heavy book? We had to check out the yellow pages from the San Francisco Public Library. And I had to call every law firm in my designated territory, San Antonio. We had to go from A to Z in order. But I decided to try the Silva technique. As I read the yellow pages, I would check my gut for an impulse or a feeling that this was the right lawyer to call. And I would call only the lawyers where I felt an intuitive yes. Now, something really strange happened that day. That day itself, I did double the sales I averaged. I attributed this to pure luck, right? So I didn't make much of it. But at the end of the week, I continued having double my sales average. And now I knew something interesting was happening. 2 weeks later, I doubled my sales again, using a different Silva technique called subliminal programming. And 2 weeks after that, I doubled my sales again, using yet another Silva technique called the 3 scenes technique. My boss came to me, and I'll never forget what he said. He said, "Wish, what are you doing?" I said, "I honestly don't know how it works, but I think it's called ESP." And he replied, "Nah, that's bullshit, but can you keep doing it?" I grew so fast in that company that in the next 4 months, I was promoted 3 times. I was 26 years old and made vice president of sales, and they shipped me out to New York to start the company's New York office on September 11, 2002. I worked at that company, operating a gorgeous office in Chelsea Market, New York, and I loved my life. But 18 months into it, I began to feel a calling. I began to feel that the corporate world wasn't for me. I wanted something where I could make an impact. And that's when I remembered a quote by Nelson Mandela. Mandela said,